Hey guys, in today's video we're going to be setting up this Manta M5P with the CB1 and some 2209 stepper drivers for a Ender 3 V2. And the reason that I wanted to do this upgrade is I wanted to add a secondary Z axis to it. The struggles that I always have with these Ender 3 V2s is that they're only supported by the Z stepper motor on one side. And over time, you have to do adjustments to the gantry to get them both even. So anyway, I'm tired of that and I wanted to try something new. I've had really good success with this Manta M5P on my Corception 300 and decided to make this video because there's been a lot of changes to the process in setting up this board, and I've also learned some additional things while working with the original M5P. Guys, before we get started, consider subscribing to the channel, turn on your notification bell, and leave me some comments. I love reading the comments and do my best to get back to you guys as soon as I see them. All right, so let's just kind of go over the board real quick. If you guys watched any of my previous videos on this board, I mentioned having an issue with getting the Klipper screen to work simultaneously with the ADXL345. And the reason that is because they were sharing resources. So I found a way to make it work. So now I got them both to work. The process for setting this up has changed significantly. So let me kind of go over a couple of the things that I'm going to do different with this setup as opposed to the previous one. In the previous setup, I was getting the power for the stepper drivers from the same DC volt input that the board was getting. So what I'm doing in this arrangement is I've decided to use the dedicated stepper driver voltage port. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm running two independent leads from the same power supply, one that will power the board, and then the other one coming directly from the power supply to power just the stepper driver. Another thing too that I'm doing differently is before, when we were connecting the accelerometer, we were using some of these pins here on this GPIO header port. And what I found out is that this board has a dedicated SPI port over here. But there's a lot of confusion on how to get this to work. And for the last, I want to say 5 days, I've been running into all kinds of issues trying to make this thing happen. Good information, or a bit of information, and then some information was lacking. The documentation for this board seems to be all over the place. And the people that are putting the information out there are leaving out certain steps that are really important. So I think I got the process down. I'm going to include it in my 2024 Klipper installation guide. So this is a PDF. I'll link it in the video description. That way you guys can check it out. And it's got all the details. So we'll be running through that. I won't actually be connecting this to the printer today. We're just going to be configuring Klipper and resolving all the errors and making sure that everything works. In addition to that, I have to create some kind of a housing to hold this because the standoff holes are in different places and the board is bigger than the original board. All right, so let me just flip this thing over real quick and just show you guys where the connections need to be made for the TFT35. So all you're doing is flipping up this little plastic tab here. It flips directly up. The ribbon goes with the contacts facing down. All right, so let's turn this thing over and show you how the connection gets made on the screen. So this one doesn't flip up, but the little black part pulls towards this side, and that's what releases this cable. Again, contacts facing down. And then once you slide it in, it'll go in about 2 millimeters. Once it's in about 2 millimeters, just push the plastic retaining tab down to lock it into place. Another thing that I added on this one was the actual CB1 heatsink This is one that's designed specifically for this board. Comes with some really nice screws and a little thermal pad that goes between the CB1 and the heatsink. To install the software, we're going to be bridging this VUSB port. So if you see it here, it has a label on it, VUSB. So you want to make sure that you have this jumper installed. What that's going to do is it's going to limit the rest of the board from getting power. You're also going to need to plug in a couple of thermistors. So I have the heated bed thermistor along with the hot end thermistor. And these are a couple little shorties that I made up just to not be in the way. One thing also that's different about dealing with this board is there's two ways to get the firmware into this board. Initially, you do it with the CB1, and this will get it partially working. From the factory, this board comes flashed with a like a light version of the firmware, but it's not the full version of the firmware. And that was a lot of the trouble that I was running into initially with this board, is that I didn't understand that it wasn't completely flashed. And that's why some of the things were not working properly. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that this Manta M5P is very finicky about the SD cards that you use. One thing that this particular board has, and also the Manta M8P, is that they can be flashed using a special mode called DFU, and that's what we're going to be flashing it with today. And I'm going to show you, there's a couple of buttons on the board here. There's two buttons right here. They're located next to each other near the center of the board. Let me bring the board in here close so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So if you look carefully here, these two switches, and they're like push switches. One is labeled boot 0, and the other one is labeled reset. So these are the two that we're going to be working with. And the way the process works is to get it into DFI mode, press and hold down the boot. And I'll go ahead and press it so you can hear it click. And then while you're holding down the boot, you just depress the reset and then release them both, just like this. And then you release them both. And you'll know if it's in DFU mode because you'll get a certain display on the screen. So now let's head over to the computer and we'll do it for real. You want to make sure that you're using a Pi compatible power supply. It needs to be 5 volts and a minimum of 2.5 amps. Ideally, if you get a 3 amp 5 volt power adapter, that would be even better. The Manta M5P and M8P use a type USB-C. So if you have a standard Pi power supply, you will need an adapter to go from micro USB to USB type C. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and plug this in. In addition to the power supply, you're also going to need a SD card. And I'm going to be using a 32 gigabyte SD card. You need a minimum of an 8 gigabyte SD card. I would get a 16 gigabyte or bigger if you're going to be holding a lot of files on your CB1. You're also going to need some kind of an adapter so that you can plug it into your USB port on your computer. And then lastly, you're going to need the stepper drivers. I already got the stepper drivers all set up with their heat sinks on them. And these are TMC 2209s. And you want to make sure that you have your stepper drivers not installed at this stage, because we're going to be fiddling around with this these boot switches and reset. And I think it's honestly, I think it's safer to have these not in the board while you're playing around with the voltages. And then we'll install them once everything is working. All right, guys, let's start by inserting our SD card into our card reader. and then putting it in the computer. Next thing we want to do is open the Raspberry Pi imager. And then we also want to open the PDF file. And we're going to just follow along. So I just finished this last night, so let's test it out and see if everything works as expected. So the first page, you'll have a download link if you don't already have the Raspberry Pi imager. Current version is 1.8.5. First thing that we're going to do is click on Choose OS. And in this case, since we're flashing CB1, there's no need to select a Raspberry Pi device because the CB1 is not listed here. So just click on Choose OS. Scroll all the way down to the bottom and select Use Custom. And then we'll have here the latest CB1 image file. To find that, let me show you how to find that. I'm going to type in here Big Tree Tech CB1. And what we want is their GitHub. And it shows here a version 2.3.3, but this version did not work for me. I couldn't get it to boot. So I would not use this version. Instead, download the one that says latest, which is 2.3.2. And you can just click here, or there are also the files below. And there's different sizes here that you can select. There's the minimum file, which is going to require you to download specific modules to get everything to work. I prefer to download the 1 gigabyte one, which has everything already ready to go, including Klipper Screen. So this is the one that I downloaded, and I already have it, so I'm not going to download it again. Once you have the file downloaded, under Use Custom, select the image and click Open. Next, we're going to choose the storage. Select your SD card and make sure that there's nothing important on it because the next step is going to format it. Click Next. And when you get this pop-up, this is specific to the Raspberry Pi. Since we're not working with a Raspberry Pi or a CM4, then we're just going to select No. Again, you get the warning that it's going to format the card. Click Yes. And then sit back and go get a drink, use the restroom. This is going to take a few minutes. Once you start getting near the ending of the flash, you may get some pop-ups. And if you get any of these pop-ups, I didn't actually get any pop-ups, so that's good. If you get any of these pop-ups that say something about you need to reformat your drive or something like that, just click the X on whatever pop-ups you get. Don't format the disk and don't click OK on anything. Just exit out of them. Click on Continue. And we no longer need the Raspberry Pi imager, so we can close this. Next thing that we need to do is we need to edit a couple of files before taking it over to the Manta M5P. So let's open the location where the card is. So it's going to be labeled boot. And in here there's going to be some files in the boot directory. The ones that we're looking for is system.cfg. And I recommend that you edit this using Notepad++. So if you don't already have this installed, just do a Google search for Notepad++ and download it, install it, and then open the file with this program. The reason is this program doesn't change any of the formatting. You may open it using a different program and it may change something that will screw you up later on. Okay, so in here, what we're going to change is you need to, if you want to change the name, the host name of your printer, and I recommend that you do this, select something that's easy for you to remember. The default host name is BTT-CB1. You can leave it like that if you like, but I'm going to change mine because I have different printers that are now running these Manta boards. I'm going to call mine E3 V2 M5P. And if you change the host name, make sure that you take off this hashtag. So you want to uncomment that by just removing the hashtag or pound symbol. Next thing we need to input here is our Wi-Fi SSID. And to find that, you can go into your Wi-Fi settings. I'm just gonna right click on mine, open internet settings, click on properties, scroll down, and I'm gonna highlight the SSID name, Control C to copy, close this, back to Notepad++, and I'm going to select in between these two quotes right here. And I'm going to Control V to paste. And then I'm just going to enter my password. Another thing that you may want to change is your time zone. The default time zone is Asia, Shanghai. And if you look a little bit further down here in the document, they have this this thing that tells you about you can run this command, yada yada. Well, you can just grab this right here and just copy it. Go to your internet browser, paste this into the search box, and right here on this GitHub, just click on that, and here's the list right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to select the one that's appropriate for your country and city. In my case, I'm in Central Time since I'm in Texas. So they don't have Texas individually in here, but they have Chicago, which is in the Central Time Zone. So I'm going to copy this one, close this, and I want to replace what's in between these two quotes. Control V to paste. And if you made a change in here, you have to uncomment it. Otherwise, it will still retain the default Asia Shanghai time zone. So just like we did with the host name, we took the hashtag off. We got to do the same thing with the time zone. All right, there's some other features down here that you can mess with if you're using a Big Tree Tech Pad 7. And once you are done with these selections, click Save, and then close this file. And then now let's open the next one. The next one that we're going to be working with is board env.txt. Again, right click on it, edit with Notepad++. And here we're going to add a few things. If you look down at the document on page 9, the first step is to add this overlay instruction. So what you can do is you can click on this little selection tool, and this will allow you to select text in this PDF. I'm gonna right click to copy, and up here at the top, right underneath, I'm gonna make another line. So I'm gonna click my cursor right after this 6 on this second line, enter twice. I'm holding down the control key and then V to paste. Now I'm going to, again, enter to make another space. And I'm going to highlight the next couple of lines here. Right click to copy. Come back to the document. You can either right click to paste it right here, or you can use Control V. Next thing we need to change is this console equals display to console equals serial. You'll see it right here. So I'm just going to change this to serial. And if you're going to be using the TFT35 underscore SPI, we need to remove the hashtag. To do that, we're going to locate it in this list, and it's right here on line 28 and 29. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab both of these right here. I'm going to right click, I'm going to select cut, and I'm going to backspace twice to take away that space. And I'm going to put it right underneath this SPI line here. So I'm going to enter twice to create some space. Control V to paste, or you can right click to paste. And then I'm going to remove this hashtag by selecting in front of the O and just hitting backspace. And that's it. All right. So now we want to, now that we have all of our settings correct in here, you want to click save. And the reason that we're doing this now is that once you load it in the Raspberry Pi, it's a little bit more of a process to edit this file. It can be done. It's just quicker to do it at this stage. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this. Close Notepad++. And let's eject this card. And take it over to the M5P. And I'm going to insert it in the SD card slot. And it goes with the label facing up. And this is not a spring-loaded card receiver like in the Ender 3V2. It just simply slides in, so just push it in until it reaches the end. Make sure that you have your VUSB jumper in. So again, we already looked at this one. It's this little jumper right here. So make sure you have those two pins bridged. And then we're gonna plug it in and boot it. All right, this will take a few minutes while it's expanding the file system. But once it's done, you'll see this light start blinking. All right, so we got our light blinking. And then it's going to try to load Klipper Screen. It may have some errors until we complete the rest of the installation. So we notice here it says Moonraker is connected, unable to get Moonraker info. Klipper has encountered some errors, so that's expected. Face this way so we can see what it's saying. All right, so let's head back over to the computer and then we'll complete the process. Next thing we need to do is scroll down to page 11. And on page 11, this gives you details on using a program called Wireless Network Watcher. And this is in the event that you forgot your printer name that you gave it during the editing of the system.config file. You can use the link in the document here to download the program. And what it will do is it will monitor everything that's on your wireless network. and it should pick up the CB1 once the image file is finished installing on it. All right, but in this case, we know what the name is, so we're just going to type it into our browser. I'm going to open Chrome, and I'm going to type in the name I gave it. So I called it E3V2 M5P. And if it doesn't recognize it as a web page, so it's already showing me here that it's already recognizing it as a web page, but you could also add the HTTP : and then you could add the other slash at the end there, and then press enter. Okay, so we got this error here that's telling us that it's missing the printer.cfg. That's okay. We're gonna take care of all of these errors here in a second. Now, one thing that I used to recommend on my previous videos was to click on the wrench icon and update everything. However, there is a lot of broken stuff right now with Klipper, and I'm not sure if they're doing lots of upgrades and maintenance to this. But if you do a full component upgrade, you're going to run into problems. So I don't recommend that you upgrade right now, because when you're going to update all components, you are going to get these yellow boxes that are going to pop up. They're going to tell you all the things that it could possibly break. So I would hold off and wait for all of that to be resolved. That way you aren't messing up your installation. So we're going to leave it the way it is. We're going to go with the stock image from Big Tree Tech, which happens to have a pretty current versions of everything. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and import our printer.cfg. And if you're using a well, in this case we're using a Manta board, but let's say you're installing Klipper, but you're not using a Manta board and you're using something else. What you would do is you can click on this down arrow here where it says config files, and change the folder to config_examples. And in here, you'll have a list, a long list, and you can expand that list by selecting all. You have a long list of all the available pre-configurations on a lot of printers that are currently in the Klipper database. So you can go in here and you can select the one you want. In our case, we're using a Big Tree Tech Manta, so we're going to find the Manta here, Manta M5P. And if you click on this, it's going to have all the pin assignments for all the different steppers. But since we're going to be installing this in an Ender 3 V2, we're also going to need the Ender 3 V2 configuration file. And we're going to take some pieces from that file and migrate them over to this file. Now, I've already done that, so we don't have to go through that whole process here. But in addition, this top section about this Manta M5P gives us the specific settings that we're going to need for the following steps. So you want to make sure that you jot some of this down. If you are working with a Manta M5P, I will have these instructions specifically for this board in the PDF, so you can just follow along. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to exit out of here. Go back to the config directory. And I'm going to import my pre-configured printer.cfg for the Ender 3 V2 using the Manta M5P control board with CB1 and TMC 2209 drivers. So this is it right here. I'm just going to double click it. It's going to upload it. Once it uploads it, we need to rename it. So you need to right click on this printer.cfg and delete it. Then we're going to right click on the Manta M5P+CB1 file, and we're going to rename it. And you want to remove everything before the printer.cfg, so that when we do that, all that we're left with is printer.cfg. Go ahead and click rename. And now we're done. Okay, so right now we got this error message. Let's go ahead and press this power button. We're going to firmware restart. And now we no longer have that error, but we have this MCU error. All right, so let's resolve this problem next. So let's minimize this for now. Go back to our flashing guide. And over here at the bottom of page 11, I specify again, do not update Klipper. Right now, it will break the MCU communication between the board and Klipper, and we don't want that. So let's skip this part for now. And then we already talked about this installation part. If you guys don't already have PuTTY, we're going to need PuTTY. So go ahead and download PuTTY. You can use the link in the document to get it. I already have it installed, so I'm just going to open mine. It's going to be the same host name as before. So for me, it's E3V2 M5P. I'm going to click open. You'll get the PuTTY login screen. The default username is BIQU. Enter. Password is also BIQU. But as you type it, it won't advance this cursor. It will just stay like this. So just press enter. And if you made a mistake, you have to use the back arrow a few times and then re-enter your password. All right, so once we're in this screen, we're going to go to the next page. This part here talks about bringing in the printer.cfg. We already did that. I already talked about the config examples. Now we're going to go through flashing the control board. First thing that we need to do is to change directory. So we're just going to copy from the Klipper flashing guide. So select this first line, right click the copy, right click the paste into the PuTTY terminal, and press enter. Select the next line, copy, paste, enter. And this is going to open up the configuration tool. Now, the settings are almost exactly what we need. So, but in this case, we need to change this. So if you look at the instructions here, it tells you normally under bootloader, you're going to have something in this part. But since we're not going to be using an SD card, we got to make sure that this, even though the instructions, the printer.cfg tells us that this needs to be set to 8 KIB bootloader, we want no bootloader. So if this wasn't already like this, then what you would have to do is press the right arrow, down arrow to no bootloader, press the space bar to select it, so that it shows just like this. The clock reference is correct, 8 megahertz crystal. Processor model is also correct up here, STM32G0B1. Microcontroller architecture is also correct, STM32. And lastly, we need to make sure that the communication interface is correct. Yes, the one that we want is USB on PA11/PA12. The settings here are correct. Next thing, we're going to press the Q key, then press the Y key to save. And now we're ready to flash. Okay, so middle of page 14, let's grab this next line. Right click, copy. Right click into PuTTY, press enter. Now we have this part done. We're going to the Manta M5P into DFU mode. to do that, like we discussed earlier, we're going to need to depress these jumpers on the board. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this next step here. So get this next line, copy, right click at the bottom, press enter. All right, so we're going to use our two little plastic tools here. I'm going to hold down the boot 0 button, and I'm going to tap the other button. Release them both. And let's head back over to the computer and I'll show you what it's showing. All right, so it looks like we're in DFU mode now. So let's go ahead and Control Z. So now we're out of here. And then now we need to check our memory allocation. Right click this next line, DFU -UTIL space -L. Right click it into PuTTY, press enter. And this is what we want. So in here you see this section right here. Actually, you need the whole thing. So we need the 0 and the 8. So Control Z to copy. Paste it in here. And here we can backspace. All right. Okay, so let's go back to over here. And let's grab this whole line. Copy it. We'll enter twice under here and paste it. Now in my case, my memory location matches this next instruction that we're going to give the CB1, so there's no change needed. But if you have a different number than I do here, you need to replace the one in this command with the output from your machine. If it's different, if it's the same, great. But if it's a different board, like a Manta M5P, it might have a different address. So you need to make sure that the address is the same. That way we're not erasing the wrong thing on the board. All right, so now we're going to copy this. We can get rid of this for now. And we're going to paste this down here. All right, now when I press the enter key, it's going to flash the board for us without the need for an SD card. So let's go ahead and do it. Okay. If you look over here, it says file downloaded successfully. And you may have an error up here that says invalid DFU suffix signature. That doesn't matter because the flash was successful. And if you look further down here in the document, you'll see what I just mentioned. Okay. Okay, now we're done here. Let's go back to the PuTTY session. Type in exit. Press enter. If it doesn't exit, do it again. Press exit again. Press enter. And now it's closed. All right. So on page 16, we need to power off the Manta by unplugging it from the wall. Or if your power plug has a switch on it, switch it off. And then we're going to check to see if we're getting communication between the CB1 and the Manta board. So let me just show you real quick what happens if you execute this command without the board actually being fully flashed, the response that you're going to get. Okay, so I got another printer currently online that has the same board. So I'm going to get into it here real quick. Or actually, let me use PuTTY. So I'm going to open up another PuTTY terminal. I'm going to type in C300, which is the host name of that other printer. BIQU. Oops. BIQU. And I'm going to right click the ls command. Let me get it from the document. Copy. paste enter, and I get this response. So if you see, it says /dev serial by USD USB Klipper, the, the, the beginning model number of the chip, and then Huracan IF00. All right. So Klipper will work on a printer that has this ID, but not fully. So there's going to be some stuff that's not going to work, which is the reason that I was having so many struggles with my other printer getting the TFT touchscreen to work alongside of the ADXL345. It's kind of like a bare bones firmware. All right. So now let's restart the M5P, the other one. So all I did was unplug it and plug it back in. And let's open PuTTY once again. All right, we're going to type in the host name E3V2 M5P, enter, EIQU username, EIQU password, and now let's run that ls command again. So right click to paste it, press enter, and now you see that we have the full ID of that processor instead of just kind of like a generic flash. We have the full flash, and now what we're going to do with this is we're going to copy this. So highlight this, Control C to copy. We're going to click over here where it says try again to connect to our board in Klipper. You notice now we have no errors here. Go ahead and open the printer.cfg and scroll down to the section that talks about the serial, MCU serial. So if you notice, I already have the address in here. Let me compare it to the one I just got. It's exactly the same. Okay. So unless this address matches the one that we just got, the CB1 won't talk to the Manta board. So you'll have connection errors and issues and stuff. All right. So the next thing we need to do is to plug in the accelerometer and verify that that's working. So let's head back over to the Manta and I'll show you how to plug it in. All right, guys. So if you notice, we got Klipper screen running over here. There's no errors on it. We can go to the temperature setting. We don't have a heater or any drivers connected to it, so we can't do anything. But click on configuration. You can go through all of this. So what I made up is I made up this plug here, and I didn't have a header plug. So what I did is I jumped on the Onshape and I designed one. And I'll leave this in the video description. That way, if you guys want to print this and use it, you can. Yeah, it works really well. And I adapted it so that it would work with the JST connectors. So it will fit onto the pins, onto a header pin, but allow you to use standard JST connectors, which I got a boatload of those. What I don't have a lot of are these header plugs. All right. The way that it plugs into the board, if you flip the board over, you'll see the different pin labels. The pin closest to the SD card and closest to this set of USB ports is the negative, and I'll show you in a diagram here in a second. So the plug is going to go like this. So it's going to get plugged in like this, and the bottom two pins are not going to have any connection. They're going to be open. So I'll plug it in, and then I'll bring the camera close so you guys can see. It's probably a good idea to turn off the CB1 before you do this. But all right, so let me get you guys in close so you can see. Right, so you can see those two bottom pins are open. It's kind of hard to tell from this from these angles here. Maybe if I turn on the light, it might help. Yeah, there you go. All right, so you can see it plugged in there. Now let's go to the diagram, and I'll show you in a very clear way how this thing is hooked up. Let's go back to our document. We've already verified the output. We've already uploaded our configuration file, renamed it. One thing that's important here, before you connect this up to a printer, you got to make sure that you go into the printer.cfg, and if you saved your previous Z offset, go ahead and enter it. All of the settings on this printer.cfg are the ones from my Ender 3v2. So it has the bed mesh for that printer. It has the PID tuning values for that printer specifically. So don't, make sure you run your own calibration. Don't just install this on your printer and try to turn it on and home it, because chances are it's not going to be exactly the same. So you're going to need to make sure. Use this as a guide. All right. Okay, so let's continue on here. So we talked about this. Okay, so this is if you want to calibrate the Z offset. We're not at that stage yet because I don't have this connected to the machine yet. I'll do a follow-up video when we actually wire it up and go through all the calibration sequences. But for now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the accelerometer. So let me get to that page here. All right. So this is how the thing is wired up. So you have the top black pin closest to the USB port is the negative. The pin to the right of that one is the power for the accelerometer. You got the CS port is the lower right pin. SCL is the lower left pin. SDO is in between the black and the orange pin in green. And then lastly, the SDA pin is between the power pin on the right side and the white pin on the bottom. So this, if you wire it this way, it will work. Okay. So now let's grab this next line and query the accelerometer. We already did this, but if you haven't entered this into Klipper, this is something that you need to enter. So I already have it in my configuration. But if you're using this Manta board on something other than an Ender 3v2 and you're not using my configuration file, you would just simply copy these fields and paste them into your printer.cfg. Let's grab this accelerometer query, copy, minimize this for now, close this, head over to the console, and in the console we're going to right click on it, paste, press enter, and if you get this response with these values, that means the accelerometer is working. And if you connect it up to your printer, mount it, and run the resonance test, you'll get the results. So that's for an up and coming video. This would be the instructions if you're wiring it to a M5P+CB1. Instructions on measuring resonance, and we'll go through this on another video. How to tune your pressure advance. How to improve performance by minimizing the amount of heat that your stepper motors are getting. So we developed this nifty little heat dissipating housing. And what this does is not only does it soak heat away from the stepper motor, but it also transfers it to the 40x40 aluminum extrusion. Links to purchaser in the document, along with some reviews. We also have our Garolite G10. So the whole purpose of putting Klipper on your machine is so you can print faster with less artifacts. And one of the key things that you need to do is to remove as much weight from the moving masses as possible. The glass plate on the Ender 3V2 is extremely heavy, along with magnetic plates. So the magnetic sheets that you apply to the aluminum, they have a significant amount of weight. Again, you got some reviews here. It also has Amazon's choice for Garolite G10. On page 36, thanks to Doug O'Connor, that we got a very thorough sheet on setting your V reference voltage. And this works in conjunction with the heat dissipating housing for the Y stepper motor. And based on Doug's testing, he was able to get the temperature down from 134 degrees to 100 degrees, which is a tremendous decrease in temperature. So thanks, Doug, for doing all that testing for me. Guys, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing, turn on your notification bell, and leave me some comments. I love reading the comments and do my best to get back to you guys as soon as I see them. All right, guys, this video is a wrap. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.